what's your take on this delay of the Galaxy S4? I mean, if I remember correctly, there were delays when the iPhone 5 came out as well.
And if in fact it is a delay of only a couple of weeks or a few weeks, it's really trivial and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Samsung is well ahead of any peak sales seasons. And so I think that as long as it does come out, and all indications from the supplier channel is that it's will. I haven't heard anything overly ominous in terms of it being delayed indefinitely. And so I do think it comes. It's well ahead of the iPhone 5S or whatever the next version iPhone is. And I think that does give Samsung the near-term advantage.
And yet, what about the reviews? A phone with no soul? That's harsh.
So I think that might be a bit extreme. It's a beautiful piece of hardware. It does put the limits on display technology, imaging technology. It's got faster internal hardware. It's got the Qualcomm Snapdragon CPU in it. Qualcomm just reported a favorable number today. And so I think that it is a move forward in smartphone technology. I think it still is a revolutionary category. Maybe this is just an evolutionary phone within that. We do see that.
So either way, Samsung is giving Apple a run for its money. I know you've been pouring through Apple's numbers from yesterday. What's your biggest takeaway? What do you think is the most important thing that we should be paying attention to from Apple's last quarter?
I really think it's execution, and execution relative to the competition. And so they've got two problems. One is they're up against lower margin and more innovative Android competition, and the other fact is they've moved away from Samsung as a low-cost component supplier. So they're getting squeezed on both ends, higher component costs and lower cost competition. That's the biggest problem for them, and they need to turn that around with their own innovation and maybe with new product or market categories.
So let's talk about these potential new categories. Tim Cook pretty much shot down the idea that they might come out with a bigger iPhone, a 5-inch iPhone, saying they weren't willing to make the sort of compromises that their competitors have made in terms of resolution and power consumption. Is that a mistake?
We've heard Apple make comments about smaller screen size tablets like that in the past and then do an about face. Actually, our own research suggests that Apple very seriously is looking at larger screen phones. We know definitively their engineers are examining it. So maybe this is a bit of a head fake from Tim Cook. Maybe it just means it's not this year. But we do think Apple is considering it. It has to be. The numbers are simply too large in that screen size.
So what about the new products that are coming this year then? He mentioned the fall specifically. I've heard a cheaper iPhone could come as early as June at WWDC. What's your take on the timing?
What I believe is an iPhone 5S was originally targeting this summer based on the comments from Tim Cook on the conference call.
5S
Maybe
as in cheaper iPhone?
A next-gen iPhone
Okay.
with potential now that it's pushing out to the fall. And I think that there are iPhone models specifically targeting the opportunity from China Mobile's build-out of the TDD LTE network. Whether that means they're cheaper or a variant of some sort, becoming an iPhone mini, I'm not sure. But I know they're going after that market, and it is a more cost-sensitive market.
You know, it's interesting because I was interviewing Kai-Fu Lee earlier today. We're going to show a portion of that interview later in this show. But he used to be the head of Google China. He worked at Apple in China, Microsoft. He doesn't think a cheaper iPhone is really the solution for Apple in China because there are just so many low-cost Android competitors. How would you respond to that?
Well, if Apple is doing its homework, and I'm sure they are, they will come to that determination on their own. And that's why I say what I do know is they're going after technology that can capitalize on the TDD LTE 4G network there in China, whether it ends up being a cheaper phone or a better phone or, again, a larger screen size phone, because I do believe they are looking at that category. That could be the answer for them.
So what about a smartwatch? What about a TV? When are these things going to happen? He said fall. Are we going to see these things this year?
Well, I don't know if those elements that you're mentioning are that transformative. There's a bigger picture here, keeping in mind that iTunes, a software move, is what really launched this story almost a decade ago now. And so does it come from some new software approach, some new approach to the TV? Because Apple TV is happening in the background already. Maybe we get a TV, but we already have Apple TV set-top boxes. We have the content going out to its devices. So these things are happening in the background. I'd like to see something bigger than simply a new hardware variant on something it's already doing.
So maybe it's something like software services, which, you know, other analysts have said actually Apple could vastly improve on.
Exactly. The execution here recently has not been great. They stumbled with Maps. Siri was a little bit overhyped when it came out.
iCloud's been having issues.
iCloud has not revolutionized the cloud infrastructure space. So there's a lot of progress they can make just on some of those initiatives that they've already gotten started. And then you'd like to think that Apple still has it within itself to dream up something we haven't thought of. But there are other things going on for Apple as well. It's a vertically integrated story. Some of its competition, like Samsung, is capitalizing on using chips like Qualcomm that just reported, and that's allowing them to get to market faster than them. So maybe even Apple needs to change its business model and business thinking a little bit.